At 62, I thought my biggest battles were over. I was wrong. When my son died, his wife didn't just report his death, she delivered a business plan. Her plan involved my house, my future, and a nursing home. She underestimated me. She didn't know about the final words my son left in writing, words that would turn her predatory hunt into her own cage. My name is Margaret Hale. I am 62 years old, a widow, and I live alone in the small timber house my husband James and I bought 4 decades ago, just outside Denver. Every scratch on the hardwood floor, every warp in the window frames, is a memory. This house is the only real inheritance we ever had, the sum total of our shared life. My Tuesday morning routine is simple: coffee, the local news, and watching the magpies fight over the bird feeder. That peace was shattered by the ring of my cell phone. It was my daughter-in-law, Vanessa. "Mom," she said. Her voice was flat, arctic, entirely devoid of emotion. "I have news. It's Daniel. He had a sudden heart attack last night. He's gone." The coffee mug slipped from my fingers, shattering on the kitchen floor. "What gone, Vanessa? What hospital? Where is he?" "It's all been handled," she said, her tone crisp, cutting off my panic. "I've already made the arrangements with the hospital. He's been transported." "Transported where I don't understand. I need to see him." "I have to go. The funeral director is calling," she said, ignoring my questions. She hung up. Just like that. My only son, gone. And his wife reported it like a delayed flight. I sank onto a kitchen chair, the hot coffee scalding my ankle. But I couldn't feel it. I had just seen Daniel 3 weeks ago. He'd seemed tired, stressed from his job, but he was complaining about quarterly reports, not chest pains. He was talking about fixing the gutter on my house, promising to come by and repaint the porch trim. He was 38. He wasn't supposed to die. My hands shook as I packed an overnight bag, a black dress, toiletries, the framed photo of Daniel and James from that fishing trip when he was 15. A wave of guilt, so profound it made me sick, washed over me. I never liked his marriage. I knew Vanessa Cruz, before she'd aggressively taken our name, was ambitious and cold. I knew she stressed him out. I knew their life was a performance. I never intervened. I kept my distance, telling myself he was a grown man. And now, my grown man was gone. I drove toward the city, my hands strangling the steering wheel. I tried calling Vanessa back at least 6 times on the 40-minute drive. Each call was declined or pushed directly to voicemail. When I reached their gated community in the wealthy part of the city, the heavy iron gate which Daniel always left open for me was closed. Not just closed, but secured. The intercom system stared at me, silent and unwelcome. I buzzed twice before Vanessa's voice finally came through, tinny and annoyed. "Yes. Vanessa, it's me. Let me in." A long pause, then a heavy buzz as the lock released. I parked in front of the massive, sterile, modern house I'd always hated. Vanessa opened the front door. She was dressed in expensive black athletic wear, her hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. Her face was perfectly made up. There was no puffiness, no redness, no sign she had shed a single tear or missed a minute of sleep. She stood squarely in the center of the doorway, physically barring my entrance. "Mum," she said, the word a sharp, false courtesy. Then her voice shifted, becoming the voice of a manager, an executive handling an unpleasant task. "Vanessa, Please. Where is he? I need to see my son. Everything has been arranged, she repeated, as if speaking to a child. His body has been taken to the mortuary. The funeral is set for Friday. It's better if you don't complicate things. Complicate things. I want to see the medical report. I want to know what happened. There's no need for you to upset yourself with the details, she said. I tried to push past her, just an inch, just to get inside the home my son had lived in. I want to see his study. I just need to be where he was. Vanessa didn't budge. She shifted her weight, a solid wall of resistance. Daniel wanted everything to be peaceful. He hated drama. She looked me up and down, a flicker of profound irritation in her eyes. You coming here and getting hysterical is just causing drama. And then, before I could find my voice to scream, she stepped back and closed the heavy, solid wood door. The lock clicked, a final, definitive sound. I was left standing on the cold stone porch, locked out of the last moments of my son's life by the woman who was supposed to be sharing my grief. 3 days later, I sat in the oppressive silence of the funeral home Vanessa had chosen. It was a vast, modern cathedral of glass and white marble, designed to impress, not to comfort. The air was heavy with the scent of expensive lilies. I scanned the chapel, searching for the faces of Daniel's past, his college roommates, our cousins, the neighbors who watched him grow up. They were almost entirely absent. The pews were filled with young, sleekly dressed men and women I had never seen before, whispering among themselves, checking their phones. They were Vanessa's colleagues, her gym friends, her network. I found my seat. Vanessa had placed me in the second row, the front row, the place reserved by sacred tradition for the grieving mother and father, was occupied by Vanessa and 3 executives from her firm. I was an honored guest, not family. I felt a chill so profound it had nothing to do with the air conditioning. I was a stranger at my own son's funeral. Vanessa walked to the podium, a vision in a perfectly tailored black dress. She began her eulogy, her voice trembling just enough. She painted a portrait of a perfect marriage, a whirlwind romance, a dynamic partnership. She spoke at length of his stress and how she, single-handedly, had managed everything for him, caring for all his needs. In the entire 10-minute speech, she never mentioned my name, nor the name of his father, James, the man who taught Daniel to ride a bike and to be kind. It was as if my son's life began and ended with her. I watched her, my old administrative mind observing the details. As she delivered a line about their cancelled trip to Italy, her voice cracked beautifully. But I saw her, behind the cover of the lectern, glance at the screen of her phone. Her tears were perfectly timed. Her grief was a performance. When the service ended, the attendees gathered in the foyer. Vanessa, looking pale but composed, accepted condolences. I stood near the doorway, unable to move, when I heard her voice, intentionally raised to carry. "It's all mine now, naturally," she said to a couple I didn't know. "The house, the investment accounts, everything. I will absolutely make sure his mother is taken care of. I'm already looking into a wonderful facility, somewhere more appropriate for her age." I heard every word. My stomach turned to ice. She was discussing my institutionalization while my son's body was still in the next room. A moment later, she glided over to me, placing a cold hand on my arm for the benefit of the watching crowd. "Oh, Margaret," she sighed, loud enough for a small cluster of her friends to hear. "You poor old thing. This must be so terribly confusing for you." She patted my hand. "She's just not lucid enough to handle all the financial stress. Daniel was so worried about her managing her property." "Margaret." A low voice cut through my shock. An older man was standing beside me. Frank O'Leary. He had been our neighbour for 30 years, a no-nonsense attorney who had handled our mortgage. He had seen the interaction. He gently steered me toward a quiet alcove. "I heard that," he said. His eyes narrowed. "Don't you listen to a word of it. I knew you when you were running the entire administrative wing of Lutheran General. You balanced the budgets for 3 departments. You are not confused." He looked at me intently. "Margaret, have you seen a will, Daniel's will?" I shook my head, feeling lost. "I don't know. I assume it's the old one, the one he and James drafted. He never said he changed it after his father died." Frank's face was grim. "If she is publicly suggesting you are incapacitated, that is a legal strategy. It's the groundwork to file for a conservatorship. If she gets that, she can take control of your assets and force the sale of your house. You need to be careful. If she tries anything, you call me immediately." I left the funeral home, the smell of lilies making me sick. I drove back to my little house, Frank's warning echoing in my ears. The house felt cold and empty. I walked to the front door and pulled the accumulated mail from the slot. Bills, junk, and a single, thick envelope from my bank. I tore it open under the porch light. It was a notice of account changes for my home. It stated that the primary contact and authorized party for the account had been updated. My name, Margaret Hale, was now listed as secondary. The new primary name, added just 2 days ago, was Vanessa Hale. I stared at the paper, my hands shaking. I had never signed anything. I had never authorized this. She had already begun. Vanessa didn't wait long. The next morning, her pearl-white luxury sedan was parked in my gravel driveway by 9 a.m. She marched up the walkway, not with a casserole or a comforting word, but with a thick leather briefcase. She sat at my kitchen table, the one James had built, and opened the case, spreading papers across the oak surface. "For future convenience, Margaret," she said, her voice all business. "It's necessary to consolidate all family assets, especially this house. We need to roll it into the Hale Family Trust." She slid a document toward me, "Which I manage." "Daniel wanted this," she insisted, anticipating my resistance. She pulled out another sheet of paper. It was a photocopy, the text slightly blurred, as if it had been copied badly on purpose. "This is his will." She held it, not letting me take it, and read a section aloud, very quickly. "All real estate holdings, tangible and intangible, shall pass to my wife and child." She emphasized wife. He trusted me completely. "Margaret, 100%. This just makes the paperwork clean." Then came the smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "I've actually found a wonderful solution for you. We sell this old place. It's falling apart, and it's far too much for you to manage. We use the money to get you a lovely suite at Everbrook Hills." I just stared at her. "It's a top-tier facility," she continued, her voice bright and false. "They specialize in memory care." The insult hung in the air between us, thick and toxic. "And why?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Would I need memory care?" "Vanessa." She gave a little laugh, a short, sharp sound. "Oh, Mum, we all saw you at the funeral. You were so confused. And what about those late bills you've been forgetting to pay your utilities? We can't have that risk. Can we? My blood ran cold. She had insisted on setting up my auto payments months ago, claiming to help me modernize. She must have cancelled them. This wasn't forgetfulness. It was sabotage. I am not signing anything, I said, pushing the papers back. The polite mask vanished. Vanessa's eyes hardened. You need to be realistic, she snapped, her voice dropping. If this goes to court, who do you think they'll listen to? The grieving young widow trying to manage a complicated estate, or the elderly mother who keeps forgetting to pay her bills? Courts always favor the younger generation when it comes to decisions about property and necessary care. She packed her briefcase and left in a cloud of expensive perfume and implied threats. My house was silent except for the frantic beating of my heart. I went to the old roll-top desk in the study, my hands shaking. I pulled out the bottom drawer, beneath the old tax returns and bank statements. There it was, James Hale's last will and testament, notarized 10 years ago. I sat down and read the familiar words. The house was joint property, and in clear, simple language. And in the event of my death, my wife, Margaret Hale, shall have the right to reside in this property for the remainder of her natural life, unchallenged. I closed my eyes, suddenly remembering James in the hospital, thin and pale, gripping my hand. I protected the house. Maggie, he had whispered. Don't let anyone take the house. I had been too lost in grief over losing him to understand what he was protecting me from. Now I knew. I picked up the phone and called Frank O'Leary. I told him everything. The family trust, Everbrook Hills, the blurry will, the threat about the courts. She's moving faster than I thought, Frank said, his voice grim. I scanned the relevant page of James's will and emailed it to him. This is good, he said. This gives you standing, but it's not enough if she challenges your competency. He set a meeting for the next day. Margaret, listen to me. If she files that petition, she will request a court-ordered evaluation. The first thing we need to do is get our own evaluation, an independent one, to prove you are perfectly capable. That night, sleep was impossible. I sat in the dark living room, clutching the old will. I was terrified of losing my home, the last piece of James I had left. But a new, darker suspicion was creeping in. Daniel was only 38. He was stressed. Yes. But he wasn't dying. Vanessa's coldness at the announcement, her performance at the funeral, the immediate move on my bank account, the fabricated will today. It was too fast. It was too organized. An awful, invasive thought pushed its way into my mind. A thought I tried to shove back down. Did Vanessa want this inheritance so badly that she would do more than just wait for nature to take its course? Frank O'Leary didn't just offer sympathy. He offered a weapon. You're past needing a neighbor, Margaret, he said. You need a specialist. He introduced me to Lydia Moore, a probate attorney whose name was spoken with respect in Denver legal circles. Lydia was close to 60, with sharp eyes and a deliberate, calm demeanor that I instantly trusted. She had a reputation for winning complex inheritance fights, particularly those involving predatory in-laws. We met in her quiet, book-lined office. There was no small talk. Tell me about the last 6 months with your son, Lydia said, her pen poised over a legal pad. Every call, any change in his mood, anything he said about money, Or about Vanessa? I closed my eyes, forcing myself back through the grief. He called less, I admitted. He sounded exhausted, but there were a couple of odd calls. About 2 months ago, he called and asked me about the house. He asked, "Mum, the house is in your name and Dad's." "Right. She can't touch it." I told him of course not. Then, just before he died, that last conversation, he said something strange. I paused, the memory surfacing. He said, "Mum, just don't sign anything. If anyone asks you to sign anything about the house, don't do it unless you talk to me first." He sounded nervous, like he was trying to warn me without saying why. Lydia wrote this down, her expression unreadable. "The will Vanessa showed you is almost certainly fraudulent or, at best, outdated," she said. "She was trying to intimidate you into signing away your rights. If Daniel was that worried, it's highly likely he created a new will. We need to find it." She explained she would begin a systematic query of the probate registries and major law firms in the Denver area. Then she looked at me with a new intensity. "The second part of this is Daniel's death. You believe it was too convenient. I agree." She picked up her phone. "I'm bringing in Nora Blake." Lydia explained that Nora was a private investigator, a former police detective in her early 50s who specialized in complex financial and medical background checks. "Nora will find out what really happened at that hospital. We need to know what Vanessa signed." Nora Blake was the opposite of Lydia. Where Lydia was calm and corporate, Nora was sharp, fast-talking, and looked like she missed nothing. She got to work immediately. The first crack appeared 2 days later. Nora called Lydia's office, and Lydia put her on speakerphone. "Got the hospital intake records," Nora said, her voice crisp. 3 weeks before Daniel Hale died, the primary emergency contact on his file was changed. "It was you?" "Margaret." "It was changed to Vanessa. She's the only one who would have had the access to do that." I felt the blood drain from my face. He had been alive and, as far as I knew, healthy when she did that. She was already cutting me out. "It gets worse," Nora continued. "I got the attending physician's notes from his final admission. Daniel presented with arrhythmia and high blood pressure. The ER doc recommended an advanced cardiac CT scan to check for blockages. Standard procedure for a man his age with those symptoms." "But they didn't do it?" Lydia asked. "No. Vanessa signed a waiver declining the test. The notes quote her as saying it was an unnecessary expense and that he was just overworked. She declined the test against medical advice." A heavy silence filled the office. Refusing a test. My son, who had excellent insurance. My son, who was now dead from a heart attack. Lydia and I were still processing that when Nora called again the next day, this time with something that changed everything. "I got into that old shared email account you mentioned. Margaret, the one you and Daniel used for the cable bill. He was using it for personal business. He was smarter than his wife thought." Nora forwarded an email chain. My hands shook as I read it. The emails were between Daniel and a firm called Northbridge Legal Group. The first one, dated 6 weeks ago, was from Daniel. The subject line read, "Urgent Will Update." My eyes scanned the messages Daniel setting a meeting, asking for confidentiality. Then, I saw the last email he ever sent them, dated just 1 month before he died. My vision blurred as I read the words he had typed. "I need to be clear. I do not want my wife, Vanessa, to have any power of decision or control over my mother's house on the old county road. Please add a specific, ironclad provision protecting my mother's right to live there for the rest of her life." I let out a sob, a sound that was half grief, half validation. He saw her. He saw what she was. He was trying to protect me. But the question hung in the air, cold and terrifying. Had he signed it in time? And if he had, why was Vanessa acting like she held all the cards? Why was she so confident she could take my home? Lydia moved quickly. She scheduled an appointment at Northbridge Legal Group for the following morning. I walked in beside her. My hands clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. Lydia introduced herself as my counsel, citing my status as the deceased's mother and a potential primary beneficiary, demanding to see the file for Daniel Hale's most recent last will and testament. We were shown into a conference room. A few minutes later, an elderly lawyer with a kind, tired face entered. He looked at me, and a flicker of recognition crossed his features. "Mrs. Hale," he said, his voice gentle. "I'm Harold Quinn. I met you briefly a few weeks ago when you came in with your son." My heart leapt. "You remember us?" "I do," he said, sitting down. He was a very determined young man. He looked at Lydia. "And yes, we have the will. Mr. Hale signed a new, fully executed and witnessed testament just over 4 weeks ago. He instructed us to file it with the probate court upon his death, which we have done. Vanessa Hale has not yet been served with her copy." Harold Quinn slid a thick, bound document across the mahogany table. My hands were shaking too much to touch it. Lydia opened it. We sat in silence as she read. I watched her face, searching for a sign. Her expression remained neutral, but her eyes sharpened. She turned a page and then stopped. She read a passage, then read it again, slowly. "Harold," she said, her voice tight. "May I read this aloud for my client?" He nodded. Lydia cleared her throat. Harold Quinn explained the preamble. Daniel had left his company shares and investment accounts to Vanessa, but they were bound by several complex conditions and payout schedules. Then he pointed to the section Lydia had found. "This, however," Harold said, "pertains to your property, Mrs. Hale." Daniel was very specific. Lydia read the words, and every sound in the world seemed to stop. "My mother, Margaret Hale, is granted sole and non-transferable lifetime residency rights at the property located at my address. This property is not to be considered part of the marital estate, nor included in any asset division for my wife." She paused, then read the next line. "Furthermore, any heir, direct or indirect, who seeks to restrict, challenge, or otherwise encumber this right of residency shall be immediately and irrevocably disinherited from any and all portions of my estate." I gasped, my hand flying to my mouth. Lydia looked up from the page, her eyes meeting mine. "There it is," she whispered. It was a legal masterpiece, a bear trap laid in formal language. It wasn't just a shield, it was a sword. If Vanessa tried to kick me out, if she pursued the conservatorship, if she did anything to take the house, she would automatically trigger her own disinheritance. She wouldn't just lose the house. She would lose everything: the stocks, the accounts, the entire fortune she was clearly counting on. "He was very tired when he came in," Harold Quinn added softly, seeing my tears. "But he was perfectly lucid. He was angry. He told me, 'My wife is looking at my mother's house like it's a commodity.' Those were his exact words. He said, I need to know she will never be put in a home just so someone can sell the house for cash. He made me read that specific clause back to him 3 times before he would sign. A wave of profound, agonizing love washed over me. He had seen her. My boy had seen exactly who he was married to, and he had used his last surge of strength to protect me. Vanessa does not know the contents of this will, Lydia said, her strategic mind already working. She's operating under the assumption she holds all the power, either with a fake will or an old one. This is our advantage. She turned to me. Margaret, we do not reveal this. We let her make the next move. We let her file her petition for conservatorship. We let her commit perjury in court about your mental state. We let her hang herself with her own greed. I left the Northbridge office feeling like a different woman. The crushing weight of fear was gone, replaced by a cold, heavy sense of duty. For the first time since that horrible phone call, I wasn't just a victim. I was the guardian of my son's final wishes. That afternoon, I met with Lydia and Nora. The plan was set. We would wait for Vanessa to attack. In the meantime, Nora would continue digging into the financial abuse, the suspicious medical decisions, and, as Nora put it, who else might be benefiting from Daniel's death? That night, I sat in my old armchair, the one James always used. I had a copy of that single, beautiful sentence from Daniel's will. I read it over and over, the words blurring through my tears. I looked at the framed photo of Daniel on the mantel, the one from his graduation, so full of life and promise. You left me the weapon. Daniel? I whispered to the quiet house. You left me the one thing she values more than my home, her money. Now, I'm going to use it to finish what you couldn't. Vanessa walked right into the trap, just as Lydia had predicted. A courier delivered a thick envelope 2 weeks after our visit to Northbridge. It was a formal petition filed with the county court. Vanessa was requesting an emergency conservatorship over me, Margaret Hale. The allegations were breathtaking in their cruelty. She claimed I was suffering from severe cognitive decline and memory loss. The petition was filled with lies, each one designed to paint me as a danger to myself. She cited an incident where I supposedly left the stove on, causing a small fire, and another where I wandered from the local supermarket and was found disoriented. She also claimed I repeatedly forgot to lock my doors, putting myself at risk. Nora Blake dismantled these claims in less than a day. My neighbour's security camera, which faced my front yard, showed me walking home from the supermarket, groceries in hand, looking perfectly fine. My credit card receipt from that day showed I had checked out at 10:03 a.m. and the camera showed me home by 10:18. Hardly lost and disoriented. The small fire was a complete fabrication. The fire department had no record, and my neighbours saw no smoke. Attached to Vanessa's petition was a copy of that same blurry, incomplete will she had shown me in my kitchen, the one that vaguely mentioned wife and child. Her lawyer used it to imply that Daniel intended for his core family to manage everything, and that my refusal to cooperate was further proof of my unreasonable and confused state of mind. While Nora was busy proving me sane, Lydia sent me to a neurologist, one of the most respected geriatric specialists in the state. I spent 4 hours undergoing cognitive tests, memory drills, and psychological screening. The report came back unequivocal. I was fully competent, processing information at an above-average level for my age, and showing absolutely no signs of dementia. My only diagnosis was situational depression consistent with recent bereavement. As we prepared for the hearing, Nora focused her attention on the money. Armed with a preliminary subpoena Lydia had secured, she cracked open Daniel and Vanessa's joint bank accounts. She was sloppy, Nora reported, sounding satisfied. She was arrogant. The records showed a series of massive fund transfers, starting the week before Daniel died. Hundreds of thousands of dollars were moved from their joint investments into a newly opened LLC, a shell company. "Guess who owns it?" Nora said. "A Mr. Mason Cole." It took Nora an hour to get a full profile. Mason Cole was a 28-year-old fitness trainer. His public Instagram account was a shrine to his own ego, full of shirtless photos at expensive resorts. Nora cross-referenced the locations and dates with Vanessa's calendar. Every time Vanessa had been on a business trip in the last 6 months, Mason Cole had posted photos from the exact same location. The affair was just the beginning. Nora also recovered deleted emails from Daniel's company server. In them, Vanessa was aggressively pressuring the chief financial officer to restructure Daniel's shares and grant her executive control, citing that Daniel was too weak to be bothered with signatures. The CFO had, thankfully, held her off, insisting he needed Daniel's direct, verbal approval. Meanwhile, Vanessa had started calling me again, trying to bully me before the hearing. "You know, if you just agree to move to Everbrook, we can make all this court nonsense go away," she'd say, her voice laced with false sympathy. But I was ready. Following Lydia's instructions, I had a small digital recorder running every time. I recorded her exasperated sighs, I recorded her threats, and I recorded the moment her mask truly slipped. "Do you have any idea how much money you are wasting?" she'd hissed in one call. "My money. You are sitting in that dump, wasting my inheritance." Lydia collected it all: the neurologist's report, the neighbor's camera footage, the bank transfers, the Instagram photos of the boyfriend, the emails from the CFO, and my recordings. We had a complete picture of fraud, adultery, and financial abuse. The conservatorship hearing Vanessa thought would be her stage to have me declared incompetent was about to become the premiere of her own downfall. My stomach was in knots. I dreaded the thought of seeing her in court, of looking at the woman who had slept with another man while my son was ill, the woman who had called me Mom during those first few happy years. The pain of it was a physical ache, but James had told me to protect the house. Daniel had given me the weapon to do it. I would not bend. I would not break. I would not let her win. The courtroom was small, but every bench was taken. I recognized 2 of my neighbors from down the street, sitting near the back. Vanessa had clearly invited them to offer support, and they wore expressions of pity, as if they were there to witness the necessary, sad duty of putting an old woman into care. They had no idea they were audience members for a different kind of show. Vanessa's lawyer, a slick man in a suit that cost more than my monthly mortgage, started first. He delivered a flowery speech about the unbearable burden of a devoted daughter-in-law. He painted a picture of Vanessa, grieving her husband while desperately trying to protect her confused and vulnerable mother-in-law. He cited the fabricated incident at the supermarket and even claimed I had forgotten my own son's birthday last year, which was a blatant lie. Then Vanessa took the stand. It was a perfect performance. She dabbed at her eyes with a silk handkerchief. She described me as a faded version of my former self, someone who often confuses the past with the present. Her voice cracked as she insisted. Daniel was so worried about her. He would have wanted, He would have wanted her to be safe. When she finished, the room was thick with misplaced sympathy. The judge looked at me with concern. Then it was Lydia's turn. "The defense calls Dr. Aris Thorne," she said calmly. The highly respected neurologist walked to the stand. Lydia led him through his findings, the 4-hour evaluation, the cognitive benchmarks. His conclusion was blunt. "Mrs. Hale's cognitive scores are above average for her age demographic," he stated. "She shows 0 clinical signs of dementia or cognitive incapacitation. She is, in my professional opinion, perfectly lucid and capable of managing her own affairs." The pity in the room began to curdle. Lydia didn't stop. She moved to the evidence screen. "The petitioner claimed Mrs. Hale is a danger in her own home, citing a small fire." She played a video file. It was from my neighbour's security camera, which faced my kitchen window. It showed me at the stove, a pot boiling over slightly, and me calmly turning off the gas, wiping the stove, and carrying on. No fire, no panic. "Next," Lydia continued, "the claim she was lost at the supermarket." She projected the time-stamped receipt and the corresponding camera footage of me walking steadily up my driveway, bags in hand. The lies Vanessa had built her case on evaporated under the flat, digital gaze of the camera. "The defense calls Margaret Hale." My legs felt weak, but I walked to the stand slowly, deliberately. I did not look at Vanessa. Lydia asked me simple questions. I answered in a clear, soft voice. I spoke about my career. "For 30 years, I said. I was the chief administrator for the surgical wing at Lutheran General. I managed schedules for 12 surgeons, handled multi-million-dollar budgets, and was responsible for regulatory compliance. I may be retired, but I am not confused." Vanessa was watching me, her composure cracking, a look of pure fury replacing the mask of grief. Lydia let the silence sit for a moment before addressing the judge. "Your Honour, the petitioner has painted herself as a loving daughter-in-law. I would like to play a recording of a phone call Mrs. Hale received 2 days ago." She pressed a button. Vanessa's voice, cold and sharp, filled the courtroom. "If you insist on being selfish and keeping this dump, I will have no choice but to let the court intervene. Do you have any idea how much money you are wasting?" The neighbours I'd seen earlier stared, their mouths open. The judge's pen stopped moving. While Vanessa sat frozen, Lydia delivered the final blow. "Your Honour, we believe this petition is not about concern for health, but about access to assets. We submit preliminary findings of highly irregular bank transfers from the deceased's joint accounts, beginning before his death, to a shell corporation. We formally request the court freeze all marital assets pending a full probate hearing." The judge's eyes narrowed, shifting from me to Vanessa. He looked at the bank statements Lydia had submitted. He didn't hesitate. "I see no evidence whatsoever of cognitive incapacitation," he declared, his voice booming. "The petition for conservatorship is dismissed, vehemently. Furthermore, based on this financial evidence, I am ordering a temporary freeze on the assets mentioned. I am also ordering a full probate hearing to adjudicate the deceased's estate. I expect the Northbridge Legal Group, as filers of the primary will, to be present." Vanessa's face was chalk white. She stared at me, her eyes wide with shock. This wasn't supposed to happen. The poor old thing had a lawyer. The confused mother-in-law had evidence. She had expected a senile woman she could roll over. She found a defense she never saw coming. I walked out of the courtroom, my hands shaking, but my head held high. I had won the first battle. A few weeks after the conservatorship hearing, we were all summoned to the offices of Northbridge Legal Group. The judge had ordered the formal reading of the will he had been notified of. The main conference room was arranged like a miniature tribunal, with Harold Quinn's desk at the front and rows of chairs facing him. Lydia, Nora, and I took seats in the back row. I sat quietly, my hand deep in my coat pocket, my fingers wrapped tightly around my house keys. Vanessa, naturally, had made an entrance. She arrived with her lawyer and two of her sleek, young friends, holding a cup of takeaway coffee as if she were at a casual business meeting. She stood near the front, laughing. "Honestly, once this is all settled," she said, her voice carrying easily to the back row, "that old house will make the most perfect down payment on a penthouse. Don't worry," she added to her friends. "My mother-in-law will be professionally cared for. It's for the best." The door closed, and Harold Quinn entered, carrying the thick, bound will. He sat and put on his glasses. "We are here for the official reading of the last will and testament of Daniel James Hale, dated October 4th, 2024. He confirmed it was signed, witnessed, and that at his client's specific request. The entire signing session had been video recorded. Vanessa tapped her expensive pen on her notepad. "This is all very dramatic, but can we just get to the distribution of assets, specifically the portion for the wife?" Harold Quinn looked up, his gaze steady. "In accordance with a specific procedure requested by Mr. Hale," he said, "any individual not named as a primary beneficiary in this document will be asked to leave the room before the detailed contents are read." He paused, looking pointedly at Vanessa. "However, Ms. Cruz, the testator made an exception for you. You may remain as an audience member, but you will have no standing to intervene." The use of her birth name, Cruz, was a scalpel, and it cut deep. Vanessa scoffed, a short, ugly sound. "That's absurd. My name is obviously all over it. I am his only legal wife. If anyone doesn't belong here, it isn't me." She crossed her legs, smirking at me. Harold ignored her and began to read. He went through the preamble. He detailed the distribution of Daniel's significant company shares, his investment portfolio, and his personal bank accounts. They were, as expected, left to my wife, Vanessa Hale. Vanessa looked smug, though her expression tightened when Harold read the numerous strict conditions and staggered payout schedules attached to every asset. Then, Harold turned the page. "Regarding the real property located at," and he read the address of my home. Vanessa leaned forward, the greedy anticipation radiating off her. She looked like she was about to be handed a bonus. Harold read slowly, each word clear and deliberate. "My mother, Margaret Hale, is granted sole, lifetime, and non-transferable residency rights at this property. This property is not to be considered part of the marital estate, nor included in any asset division for my wife." The air in the room went still. Vanessa's smile vanished. Harold continued, his voice rising just slightly to read the most important part. "Furthermore, any heir, direct or indirect, who seeks to restrict, challenge, or otherwise encumber this right of residency shall be immediately and irrevocably disinherited from any and all other assets of my estate." The color drained from Vanessa's face. She looked as if she had been slapped. "No," she whispered. Then she shot to her feet. "No, that is impossible. He would never." She manipulated him. She screamed, her finger jabbing toward me. "She got to him when he was sick. She forced him. This is illegal." The testator anticipated this reaction. "Ms. Cruz," Harold said calmly. He nodded to his assistant. A large monitor on the wall flickered on, and suddenly, there was Daniel. My breath caught. He looked so terribly tired, pale and thin, but his eyes were clear, and his voice was angry. "I am signing this will today of my own free will," he said, staring into the camera. "I need to ensure my mother is protected. I am aware that my wife, that someone, might want to use that house for money, to sell it, to put my mother in a home. This clause is to stop that. It is my final wish. It is non-negotiable." The video clicked off. Vanessa stood frozen, staring at the blank screen, her mouth half open. The words on the paper, combined with the voice of her dead husband from that video, had finally done it. That one sentence, the poison pill Daniel had planted, had turned her predatory arrogance into pure, unadulterated terror. She finally understood. She could have the house, or she could have the money. She could not have both. And she had already, in front of a judge, tried to take the house. She didn't just accept defeat, trapped by Daniel's will. Vanessa became desperate. 3 nights after the reading, my doorbell rang, hard and insistent, long past 11 o'clock. I went to the door, my heart pounding. It was Vanessa. She wasn't the grieving widow or the calculating executive. She was a cornered animal. The moment I unlocked the door, she pushed it open, shoving me back into the foyer. Her eyes were wild, her expensive coat thrown carelessly over pajamas. "You think you're clever, you old bitch," she hissed, her voice raw. She was shaking with rage. "You think you and that dead son of yours have won? Vanessa, you need to leave. I am not leaving without what is mine." She slammed a thick stack of papers onto my hallway table. "You are going to sign this. It's a release, an authorization to sell. You sign it, and I'll see that you get a small percentage. You refuse? And..." She leaned in, her smell a mix of alcohol and expensive perfume. "Accidents happen, Margaret. All the time. An old woman, all alone, confuses her pills. A small electrical fire. A bad fall down those stairs. It would be so easy to prove you were confused when it happened." My hands trembled, but it wasn't just with fear. It was with preparation. Lydia and Nora had warned me this might happen. They had installed a small, high-definition camera on my bookshelf, aimed right at the front door. And in the pocket of my housecoat, a digital audio recorder was already running. I just had to keep her talking. I shrank back, playing the part she expected. "Please," I whispered, letting my voice shake. "I don't understand. Daniel left you the company, the money. Why is this house so important?" She let out a high, sharp laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "He left me accounts I can't touch. He left me conditions. I have partners who need to be paid. Mason, he invested everything in me, believing I was about to inherit millions. I need the cash from this house to pay back what I owe." She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in. Daniel died just in time. He was already getting suspicious of the transfers. Another few weeks, and his auditors would have found everything. His convenient exit. saved me from total bankruptcy. There it was. The confession, spat out in a torrent of entitled rage. "So you see," she snarled, grabbing the papers from the table and shoving them against my chest. "You have to sign. It's just a little formality." "I don't think she does." The voice came from the darkness of the dining room. Vanessa spun around. Nora Blake stepped into the light, holding her phone up. Beside her, buttoning his uniform jacket, was Officer Riley, the local patrolman Nora had briefed and kept on standby just down the street. Vanessa's face went blank with shock, her hand still clutching my arm. "What? This is harassment. You can't. This is a setup." "It's a documented felony, Ms. Cruz," Nora said, her voice ice. "Coercion of an elder, uttering threats. We have it all on video and audio." Officer Riley stepped forward. "Ma'am, you are under arrest." As he cuffed her, Vanessa finally collapsed, screaming that it was all a lie, that I was the one who had set her up. But the threats, the confession about the bankruptcy, the admission of Mason, it was all recorded. While Vanessa was being processed, the rest of the puzzle Nora had been building finally clicked into place. Her full financial investigation was complete. Over $400,000 had been moved from Daniel's joint accounts to Mason Cole's shell company in the 6 weeks before Daniel died. Nora found the deleted emails where Vanessa authorized the transfers and then used Daniel's laptop to try and cover her tracks. The hospital investigation was even more damning. The attending physician, under subpoena, provided a sworn statement. He had strongly advised an advanced cardiac CT and a specific anticoagulant. Vanessa had signed the refusal form against medical advice, citing, "Daniel does not want to prolong his suffering." But the hospital had no record, no signature or video, of Daniel agreeing to that. Alarmed by this, the hospital's own risk management team had opened a review. They re-examined Daniel's final toxicology report. On the night he died, his blood contained an abnormally high dose of a powerful sedative, one not prescribed by the hospital, combined with the medication that lowered his blood pressure. Nora had already found the prescription for that sedative, filled just 2 days before his death, at a pharmacy near Vanessa's gym, in her name. The pieces formed a horrifying picture of the affair: the financial fraud, the refusal of life-saving tests, the died just-in-time slip-up, and the presence of an unprescribed, lethal combination of drugs. This was no longer about an inheritance. The district attorney's office took the case the next day. Lydia sat with me in my kitchen, the house now quiet and secure. "Margaret," she said gently, "we have all the evidence, the financial crimes, the medical records, and now the coercion. They are opening a full criminal investigation into his death. The game wasn't about the house anymore. It was about finding out how my son really died and giving him the justice he deserved." The criminal trial began 8 months later. The air in the main courthouse was heavy and stale. I sat in the front row, wearing my simple grey suit, my hands clutching a framed photograph of Daniel from his college graduation. Vanessa sat across the aisle, looking thin and severe. The charges were read elder abuse, felony financial fraud, and manslaughter. The district attorney, a sharp woman named Reyes, laid out the story for the jury. She didn't paint Vanessa as a monster, but as a deeply narcissistic and greedy woman trapped by her own choices. This wasn't a sudden crime of passion, Reyes argued. It was a slow, calculated isolation. She presented the timeline: the fracturing marriage, the affair with Mason Cole, the mounting secret debts. Then, Daniel's suspicion, his secret visit to Harold Quinn to change the will, and immediately following that, Vanessa taking complete control of his medical care. Daniel's attending physician took the stand. He looked uncomfortable. He admitted he had felt profoundly uneasy when Vanessa refused the cardiac CT scan. She also had him sign a DNR order that day, he testified, which I found odd. She insisted no other family, not even his mother, be notified, stating Daniel didn't want the drama. I assumed it was a family decision. I was wrong. Next came the toxicologist. He explained the reports from the night Daniel died. His system contained a level of a powerful sedative that was 3 times the therapeutic dose, combined with the beta blocker he was prescribed. In a patient with his cardiac risk, this combination is catastrophic. It would, in simple terms, quietly stop the heart. Vanessa's defense tried to argue it was a tragic error in medication, or the desperate act of a wife trying to ease her husband's anxiety. This defense crumbled when Prosecutor Reyes projected the text messages Nora had recovered. The jury read the texts between Vanessa and Mason Cole. One from Vanessa, sent 5 days before Daniel died, just a little longer. A few more weeks and everything will be ours. And another, referencing my failed conservatorship attempt. The old woman can't drag this out. It will be handled. Then it was my turn. I walked to the stand, my knees shaking. I told them everything. The cold, sterile phone call. The way she locked me out of his house. The way she had publicly humiliated me at the funeral. She didn't just want his money, I said, my voice quiet but clear. She wanted to erase me, to erase his entire life before her. The prosecutor asked me to identify Daniel's will. She asked me to read the specific clause he had added. I unfolded the paper. I read the words aloud into the microphone. Any heir who seeks to restrict this right of residency shall be immediately and irrevocably disinherited. The courtroom was absolutely silent. I looked across the room, directly at Vanessa for the first time. My son saw the path you chose, I said, my voice finding a strength I didn't know I had. He didn't live long enough to save himself, but he left me that sentence. He left it so I would know what to do. The final piece of evidence was the audio recording from my home. The jury heard Vanessa's voice, raw and full of hate, threatening me. And then they heard her say it. Daniel died just in time. Vanessa, who had maintained a mask of cold composure, finally broke. She let out a dry, gasping sob, burying her face in her hands. The combination of her own words, the financial records, and the toxicology report had built an unbreakable wall. The jury's deliberation was short. Guilty. On all counts, financial fraud, elder abuse, and the most serious charge of manslaughter. Mason Cole was tried separately for his role in the fraud and also received a prison sentence. The hundreds of thousands of dollars they had hidden were seized. I returned home that evening, after the sentencing. My small house was exactly the same. It was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet. It wasn't the silence of loneliness. It was the silence of finality. I walked into the hallway and placed my hand on the peeling paint of the wall, the spot Daniel had promised he would fix for me. I leaned my forehead against the cool plaster. You did it, Daniel, I whispered. Your house. It protected me. And that one sentence, it trapped her. I went to the old armchair James had loved. and sat down, looking out the window as the sun set. I didn't feel triumphant. There is no victory in this kind of war. There was just the heavy, profound stillness of justice finally, painfully, served, and the knowledge that I had saved the last piece of my family's honor. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from, so please drop a comment below and share your thoughts. If this story touched you, please subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, give this video a like, and support us by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.